There is a moment that every football fan who witnessed it remembers exactly. Santiago Bernabeu, Madrid, January 2012. Barcelona had just beaten Real Madrid 2-1 in the Copa del Rey quarter-final first leg. The match was already over. The tension was still boiling, and somewhere in the chaos of bodies and frustration on that pitch, Lionel Messi was lying on the ground. What happened next lasted less than 2 seconds. A figure walked past him, slowly, deliberately. And as he passed, his boot came down directly onto Messi's hand. Not an accident, not a collision, a deliberate, calculated act on a man already on the floor. The figure was Pepe. The cameras caught everything. The world watched it on replay 1,000 times. Wayne Rooney, who had no particular stake in El Clasico, watched it and immediately went to Twitter and typed 4 words. Pepe, what an idiot. That was the moment the rivalry became something else entirely. Something personal. Something that would stretch across more than a decade, across 2 continents, across World Cups and Champions League nights and trash talk on live pitches, until it became the most bitter, most intense, most deeply personal conflict of Lionel Messi's entire career. Messi faced Ronaldo for 15 years. He faced Ramos. He faced entire teams built specifically to stop him. But none of them got under his skin the way Pepe did. This is that story. To understand why this rivalry became what it became, you first as in European football. Strong, fast, completely fearless. The kind of defender that strikers spent the week before a match caught that head was simple and brutal. He hurt people. Not always with tackles, sometimes with words, sometimes with a hand in the reckless that even his own teammates looked away. Real Madrid fans loved him for it. Opposition fans despised him for it. And Barcelona, more than any other club, felt the full force of what Pepe was willing to do when the stakes were high enough. The first major collision between Pepe and Messi happened not in La Liga, but in the Champions League, April 2011. The semi-final first leg at the Bernabeu. This was the peak of the Guardiola versus Mourinho era, 4 El Clásicos in 18 days. The entire football world was watching, and Mourinho had set his team up specifically to suffocate Barcelona, to stop Messi, to win by any means necessary. In the 61st minute, Pepe went in hard on Dani Alves with a high challenge, red card, off. And from that moment the match changed completely, because when Pepe left the pitch, Messi was unleashed. 2 goals, a masterclass. Barcelona won 2-0 at the Bernabeu and effectively ended the tie before the second leg even began. Mourinho was furious. He claimed the red card was a conspiracy. He pointed fingers at referees, at UEFA, at the football establishment. The noise was enormous, but the image that remained was simpler than any conspiracy theory. Pepe gone. Messi unstoppable. That pattern, Pepe trying to intimidate, Messi responding with brilliance, would define everything that came after. Then came January 2012, the stomp. Copa del Rey, quarter-final, Santiago Bernabeu again. Barcelona won 2-1. But the result was almost secondary to what happened during the match and in the moments after it. Messi was on the ground. Pepe walked past. The boot came down, deliberate, calculated, premeditated. Messi's immediate reaction said everything. He did not scream. He did not confront Pepe directly in that moment. He got up. He looked at Pepe with an expression that was not anger in the loud sense. It was something colder than anger, something that gets stored rather than released. Barcelona coach Pep Guardiola did not hide his feelings afterward. Xavi told reporters that was brutal. Even Mourinho, Pepe's own manager, admitted that if the stomp was intentional, then it was punishable. The referee had not seen it. No card was given. Pepe escaped punishment on the pitch, but something had shifted between these two men. Because Messi remembered. Messi always remembered. 2 years later, on March 23rd, 2014, it came out into the open. Real Madrid versus Barcelona. Another El Clasico. This one ended 3-4 to Barcelona, a result that still lives in football memory as one of the great Clasico performances. But during the match, there was a moment near the touchline that cameras captured and lip readers later translated. Pepe confronted Messi directly, got in his face, and said it plainly. "Against me, you always shit yourself." Messi looked at him, did not flinch, did not step back, and replied just as plainly, "What are you talking about? I always score against you and your team." Not a boast, a fact. Messi's record in El Clasico was extraordinary. 26 goals in 45 appearances against Real Madrid across his career. Pepe had been on that pitch for a significant number of them. He had tried everything: intimidation, physical punishment, psychological pressure, and Messi had scored anyway, every single time. That exchange in 2014 was not just trash talk between two footballers, it was the summary of an entire dynamic. One man trying everything in his considerable arsenal to stop another, and the other man simply walking past all of it and putting the ball in the net. But Pepe was not finished, and in 2016, Messi made sure he was not either. 4 years is a long time in football. Teams change, players move, rivalries cool down and get replaced by new ones. The game moves forward, and the old battles become archive footage that people watch and say, "Remember when that happened?" But some things do not cool down. Clasico. Barcelona versus Real Madrid. Second half. A corner routine, bodies jostling in the box the way they always do when both teams know exactly how much is at stake. And then, completely unprompted, in a moment that had nothing to do with the ball or the play or any legitimate football action, Lionel Messi locked onto Pepe like a heat-seeking missile and rugby tackled him to the ground. Not a football challenge, not a defensive header. A full-body rugby tackle from a man who weighs 67 kilograms, throwing himself at a 6-foot central defender, because 4 years earlier that central defender had stood on his hand and walked away unpunished. The moment lasted 2 seconds. It achieved nothing tactical. Barcelona lost the match 2-1. But that was not the point. The point was that Messi, the man who famously let his football do all the talking, who never sought confrontation, who responded to every provocation with a goal rather than a reaction, had finally, visibly, undeniably shown the world that Pepe had gotten to him in a way nobody else ever had. Messi morphed into an NFL linebacker for 2 seconds in an El Clasico. That tells you everything about how deep this went. Pepe's response to all of this was consistent throughout the years. After the 2012 stomp, he released a statement through Real Madrid's official website claiming the incident was entirely unintentional. He said, and these are his actual words, "I wish to say yesterday's incident with Leo Messi was unintentional, but I nevertheless want to apologize to him if he was offended, because all I do is defend my team and this institution. The thought of hurting a colleague has never entered my mind." Nobody believed him, not the cameras that had caught him looking down at Messi's hand before his boot descended, not Wayne Rooney, not Pep Guardiola, not the reporters who reviewed the footage frame by frame and noted that Pepe had made not one, but 3 separate attempts at the stomp. before landing it cleanly. The thought of hurting a colleague had very clearly entered his mind. It had entered his mind, found a comfortable seat, and stayed there for the duration of the match. But that statement, that pretense of innocence, was somehow more infuriating than the act itself. Because it meant Pepe was not just willing to do it, he was willing to do it and then stand in front of cameras and deny it with a straight face. And for Messi, a man built on directness, on saying exactly what he meant on the pitch with his feet, that combination of violence and dishonesty was something he could neither forget nor forgive. The rivalry did not stay on Spanish soil. Qatar. December 2022, the World Cup quarter-finals. Argentina had just beaten the Netherlands in a chaotic, card-filled match in which Messi had criticised the Spanish referee openly and publicly, something he rarely did. The football world was still processing the drama of that night. The following day, Portugal played Morocco. Morocco won 1-0, and Pepe, now 39 years old, playing his last World Cup, watching his international career end on that pitch, walked to the post-match cameras and delivered one of the most remarkable interviews in World Cup history. He did not talk about Morocco's defending, he did not talk about Portugal's missed chances, he talked about Messi. It is unacceptable that an Argentine referee administered the game today after what happened yesterday, with Messi complaining and Argentina talking. He then looked directly into the camera and said words that the football world would repeat for weeks afterward. After what I saw today, they can give the title to Argentina now. This was extraordinary. Portugal had just been eliminated by Morocco, an African nation making history, playing some of the most remarkable football the tournament had seen. And Pepe's post-match interview was not about Morocco at all. It was about Messi, even at the end, even at 39, even after retirement was hours away. Pepe's last act on the World Cup stage was to fire one final shot at the man who had scored 26 goals against his team, who had nutmegged and dribbled past him more times than either of them would care to count, and who had never, not once in 15 years, given Pepe the satisfaction of a visible reaction, until the rugby tackle. So what does this rivalry actually tell us? Not about football tactics, not about El Clasico statistics or Champions League nights or World Cup drama. It tells us something more specific and more human than any of that. It tells us that even the greatest player who ever lived, a man who responded to almost every provocation in his career with complete silence and then scored a goal, had a limit. Pepe found that limit, not because Pepe was the strongest defender Messi ever faced. He was not. Not because Pepe stopped him consistently. He did not. Messi's record against Real Madrid across 15 years of El Clasico is one of the most dominant individual records in the history of the fixture. Pepe found that limit because of how he operated, the deliberate stomp on a man already on the ground. The trash talk designed not to test Messi's football, but to test his character. The post-match denials delivered with complete composure. The 2022 World Cup interview that proved this was never just about football for either of them. Messi faced defenders who were faster, stronger, more technically gifted. He faced teams built entirely around stopping him. He faced the greatest rivalry the sport has ever produced in Ronaldo and handled it with grace and mutual respect. But Pepe was different. Pepe was the one man in Messi's career who seemed to exist not to compete with him, but to get inside him. And for 2 seconds in April 2016, in a corner routine, in an El Clasico, that Barcelona ultimately lost, Pepe succeeded. That rugby tackle was not a football moment, it was a confession.